selling point there, meaning you could have the nicest house on the
I
block.
know, I feel
But that doesn't mean that that's what it's meant.
that's what it all depends on. I really don't want to.
I understand. And it's a classic, it'll be 39 years, you remember in October. I don't want to get my house. God, I've never heard that one before.
Well, you know, I think this time, like I'm in a good, last, when we bought this house, when we moved from the other place, we came over and put money on it and got in contract before we even put our house on the market.
Bad move.
Bad move. So this time, I'm just, you know.
Bad girl, what you
it
gonna do?
works, yeah. So I'm
No, just have the moving in, take your stuff to somewhere, in a storage facility up there, and then hi, you're a cash buyer. What do you want to do here, et cetera.
April, are you ready?
Life's too short to put up.
Yes.
Good for you. If I can just speak, looking at my one cabinet.
I was just thinking when you said, you know, now the tail's been running.
Ed, would you tell Tony if we're ready to go?
Really?
Would you tell Tony we're ready to go?
So he's, you know, I have to convince her to.
There must be some university that's
Yeah, they have a university.
I don't know, I mean,
Plenty of South Carolina.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 5 p.m. on September the 1st, 2016. In accordance with the laws of this state and a resolution of this board, we are required to hold a public hearing on the fiscal year 17, that is October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, 2017 budget. Everyone who wishes to speak to the board on the budget this evening will be given an opportunity. Some bullet points on the budget that you should have in mind when you come to speak to the board. The increase in the general fund assessment for next year is 17.88%, or $66.44 per EAU. Without the debt service for the Lake Bank Restoration Project, the general fund assessments for next year would be level. Without the Lake Bank Restoration Project, the general fund assessments for next year would be $371.67 per EAU. The total debt service for the Lake Bank Restoration Project is $396,034. The EAU assessment for Pelican Preserve in the coming year is not increasing. The EAU assessment for Stony Brook and Town Lakes Fund is also not increasing next year. I now wish to declare this annual budget hearing in session, and I wish to invite anyone who would like to address the board regarding the fiscal year 17 budget to be able to do so at this time. I've asked those who wish to speak to the board on the budget to fill out one of our forms, and the manager has them, and he'll read them off in order that he was given them. This will mean that you won't have to stand here at the podium and wait your turn. So we'll call off your names. Please come to the podium, speak directly into the microphone, give us your name and address. Mr. Manager, may I have the first name?
Up first is Ed Tinkle.
Mr. Tinkle.
Ed Tinkle, 11180 Bent Pine Drive. I have 3 items. First, I endorse the budget as presented. Second item is I would request that, and I brought this up for I don't know how many umpteen years, Your resolution you're going to pass tonight, hopefully, will have an Exhibit B attached to it, which is the assessment identification book. It's got to be that thick. I would ask that the copy of that be maintained here at the district, that where residents want to come and look at it, they can look at it. And then the last item I have is I talked to April earlier this week. I was a little misunderstanding, I guess, of the fact that a year or so ago, we had an agreement with Lee County Utilities where we got somewhere in the neighborhood $1.2 million. I was of the understanding that that money was coming to us as cash that we would put into our account. I am now have been told that it was taken as a credit on our bills and it is essentially gone. All of it's been accounted for. Well, because of the fact that we have a utility set up that was not contemplating that money, that means we must have built up a reserve such that we should have about $1.3 million in cash somewhere. I would ask that that money be transferred to the capital reserve or a reserve for replacement account in the enterprise fund so that that money doesn't get lost. We're going to need it in the next couple of years for utilities. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Tinkle? Thank you, Mr. Tinkle.
Thank you.
Question. Who do you represent, sir?
I'm a homeowner.
Okay. Are you on a board or something? I'm new, so I'm.
I'm on a couple of committees, and I think that the thing is that needs to be defended, and Bill, you did a good job starting, but I don't think you went as far as that I might go. A lot of this increase is because of these ponds. These ponds were let go and essentially nothing done for years. That's why we're picking up this tab, and it's not only going to be this year, it's going to be, we're doing 13 ponds, $6 million.
And not all of them is.
And we have 60 ponds total. There's going to be a lot more money spent on this. And there's nothing we can do because we're under the gun from the state. We got to do it. I'm just as mad as anybody else is, but the can's been kicked down the road and it landed here. This
Thanks,
board,
Ed.
board doesn't have anything to do.
Thank you, Ed. Mr. Manager?
Up next is Charles Schaefer.
My name is Charles Schaefer, 10275 Bellcrest Boulevard up in Hampton Park. I only came into this community here in late 2010, and I went back there and I looked over what the fees were and what they are today, or what you're proposing. And over the last 6 years, you've increased them by 30%. So that's about 5% a year. This year, you're going to ask for almost 18%. So the question is, why such a high increase over previous years?
I will attempt to answer that for you if you'd like an answer now.
Yeah.
Gateway is a beautiful community, but it's 26 years old. And during those previous 26 years, very little attention has been given to what some of you call lakes, which are really stormwater retention ponds. They have algae on top of them in some places, and even worse, some of the lake banks are falling into the ponds. The board decided some time ago that that was a unsatisfactory condition, especially for those of you who would like to get a nice dollar number from your home when you sell. April, do you have some photos that you can show us on the screen as to exactly what kind of situation we're trying to restore?
And there's other aging infrastructure. We have a lot of other aging infrastructure in the community also that needs to be upgraded.
That's okay. Do you want to describe what we're looking at, or do you want me to?
This is Lake 118, and Lake 118 is in Callaway Greens. So you can see where the erosion is very steep. I mean, it's caused by several issues, and Tyler may be able to, is he here? I'm not sure, they're not here right now, talk to some of the issues, but a lot of this is just caused over behavioral issues, possibly bad design, and not maintaining the appropriately irrigation systems from the residents. And, it's got to the point where it's unacceptable.
Does that answer your, does that give you an
Well,
idea?
yeah, but aren't these supposed to be maintained every year throughout the year? Why are we waiting until it's this bad before we do anything?
That's a great question.
Where did the budget money go to maintain these lakes all these years?
Well, it wasn't. There was,
There was no money?
No, the fees that residents of Gateway paid in the past years have been very small, very, very small. And this problem, I'm gonna say it has crept up on us. That's not quite right. We've known for some time that we had this problem on the lake bank. South Florida Water Management Association has looked at this and told us that we need to correct these situations. If you continue to look on the screen, you'll see some of the other areas that we're trying to correct. We have over 50 ponds in Gateway. We have chosen 13 for our first group to work on. And we have applied to the state for what's called a state revolving fund. And the increase for fiscal 17 that you're seeing, you know, that 17% increase is 100% needed for the debt service on the loan that we're gonna take to have the money on hand to hire the contractors to fix these first 13 ponds.
And that's this increase you're talking about here, just for the lakes, or?
The 17%, if we were not doing any lake bank restoration, your fees for next year, fiscal 17, would be exactly the same as they are right now. Unfortunately, now is the time that we have to pay the piper and get working on these lakes before they get even worse.
Now, for next year now, I'm just gonna assume, once you take care of those 13 lakes, there's gonna be another 20% increase, or 17% increase to do 13 more?
As soon as we get the first 13.
17 more percent than what we're gonna pay now this year, or?
I would suggest not, but I haven't actually done that number for fiscal 18. Steve, is there anything you can tell us about fiscal 18, assuming we get the 13 lakes done this coming year?
It'll depend upon if you're gonna do the next 13,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Honest to goodness, our record of lake bank restoration to date has been less than stellar. We have tried and tried and tried to do the very best we can on these, and we're gonna continue to try. But this is not like making donuts. Every one of these lakes is a living, breathing entity, and every one is unique. And every one of them has to be surveyed and proper construction design worked out.
So you're gonna start with the worst and go backwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been prioritized.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charles. Mr. Manager?
Next up is Jan Bierce.
I was hoping to hear more people so I could get more information.
Do you want to wait? Do you want to wait?
No, I may be a pain in the neck, and if you want me to wait, you can ask me to come back.
No, please state your name and address for the record.
Jan Bierce, 10342 Matarita Drive in Pelican Preserves. I have some just simple questions because I'm new. I moved in the end of January, so how many communities are represented in the Gateway meeting today?
How many different neighborhoods?
Right, that you all are assessing this 18% increase for?
Well, the big increase is only in what we call Fund 01, the general fund, which is what some of us recall, what we call the old Gateway side. None of this 17% is being assessed against Pelican Preserve. Your numbers are exactly the same as they were last year.
Okay, I'm on a different board, and I saw those numbers, and I thought, why are we being charged 18% more? So, thank you for indulging me. When I look at the budget, and I look at the salaries and everything else, What percentage is this that Pelican pays? And I know that might be a little myopic to some. 9% for Pelican?
Pelican pays directly for the things that, the things that Pelican receives. Then there is what most of us in accounting call an overhead rate for the services that the CDD provides to Pelican.
Okay. Simple question, are these full-time jobs?
Yeah, yeah, except for the swimming pool attendant.
There's 3 part-time.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you, thank you.
Okay. Can I reserve speaking later if I have more questions?
Certainly.
I'm new, I'm learning, but if Pelicans, I'm sorry that anyone else has to pick up that huge fee.
You're doing it over
We
there.
already are.
You're doing it too.
Yeah, if you look
Okay,
at
well, on that
Pelican-
note,
If you look at Pelican's numbers versus Gateway's numbers,
I've got Pelicans numbers.
yeah, they are much higher than Gateway's numbers.
Why are we paying both?
You're not.
We're not?
You're not.
Thank
Jan,
you.
may we have someone else to the podium until you?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'm gonna get some.
thank you.
Joe Talone.
Hi.
Hi.
Joe Talone,
Would you spell that last for me, please?
Tellone.
Thank you. And address, please?
11756 Mahogany Run.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. I don't want to be obnoxious or anything, so I'm just going to say it as best I can. But why do we have a budget if nobody ever sticks to it? It kind of seems to me that you guys do run the show just like the federal government. You know, you spend money and then just, you know, come after us because now you're broke and you need more. You know, I have a lot of cost-saving ideas for you guys. One of them being our landscaping. There's a lot of unnecessary planting and replanting, and I think it happens like quarterly. Why can't we have shrubs that are flowering that only need to be trimmed instead of constantly thrown out and new ones put in? And if you're throwing them away, offer them to the people that live in the community. My other question was, why is our reserve fund depleted? Isn't that what a reserve fund is for? For unintended things that come up?
Well-
Stephen, why is our reserve fund depleted?
Well, I don't know that I would use the word depleted.
Well, go
Well,
for
it said in this little
Right.
thing here,
Well, I'm gonna switch to the
it
page here
says,
first.
as well as replacement of depleted reserve funds.
Switch to the page. Yeah.
I read that and went,
Thought you'd get away with this?
You said
Yeah.
it.
District manager's wording.
The reason why we are doing the loan is so that we don't have to use all of the reserve that we have left. And if you don't do the loan, then you won't be able to basically do any other project within the district while you're just paying for the land bank restoration. So the increase is to cover the principal and interest for the loan. If you don't do the loan, then you're going to have to use up the rest of your money, and you don't have enough to cover the entire
Okay, well,
project.
how about we just use what reserve we had to cover what we can cover, instead of getting a loan and paying interest on it also? I mean, I do my checkbook, so, you know, instead of borrowing money to pay off a bill, I just pay off what I can, instead of paying interest on a credit card or whatever.
Steve?
Yeah,
let me-
mine are
Sure.
in addition to what Steve said, there is a concept of intergenerational equity. And that means.
Intergenerational equity.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Tell me what that is.
Well, I'm gonna try and give it a shot.
Okay.
That means the people, residents, if you will, who are going to benefit and enjoy these improved ponds, lakes, and their lake banks, and the quality of their water for 10, 15, 20 years are the ones who should be paying for the cost of this improvement. And the improvement is what we've been talking about, starting with the 13 lakes. And the folks who are going to be here, hopefully all of us will, but we know it's not going to be the case. Those of us who are going to enjoy the benefit of the work that we're setting about doing are the ones who are going to pay for it through the funded debt of the repayment of the debt to the state.
Okay. Which brings me to my next point. I don't live on a pond or a lake. I live on the wall. Now, the folks that live on the pond, their homes are valued at whatever, $20,000 more just because they're on the water. Why do I have to pay for their beautiful water
Because
view?
one thing we need to get away from is thinking of these as recreational lakes. They're not recreational lakes, they're not for boating.
Oh, I
That's
understand.
our drainage system. So everybody that has a house in every community, their property drains into these lakes and eventually into the 6 Mile Cypress Slope. So collectively, we're all draining into the same waterway. So those waterways and that drainage needs to be working properly for everybody, or else we're gonna have even greater problems than we do now. So if your property drains, if your driveway drains, it's draining into one of the lakes in your community. So,
You guys are so good.
No, Margaret's really good.
Give me that.
Okay.
Give me the 5.
it's true.
My other point was this. I was here a couple years ago when we were moving our Gateway Boulevard in Griffin, I believe, over to the county. And there was a big discussion about those beautiful palms on Gateway Greens towards 82 that needed to be moved. And I was under the distinct impression that it was for safety purposes. So come to find out, I thought they were gonna like widen the road or something, because it is a nightmare if you're going that way or trying to come in that way. And now that Arborwood is apparently gonna have an access to Gateway, they're not positively,
They're using that as a construction entrance, but it'll be closed off when the
Oh.
community is complete.
okay, you promise.
They're good, Pelican Preserve will make sure that that never happens.
Okay, then my issue is with the palm trees. They took them and they moved them. Did our association fees pay for that?
The CDD,
Yes.
everybody in the CDD, yes.
We
it
all
was all
paid-
shared
we all
Okay,
paid for
so
that.
why did they have to be moved?
For safety purposes.
Okay.
The county would not take over the road from the CDD
a code
without
Okay.
those being moved.
So those 50 new palm trees that were planted in that same spot, there's no safety issue with those?
They're completely different types of palms, and they're considered what is called frangible, which means that they will break away if a car happens to run into them. The issue was with the palm trees, that they were dangerous if a car hit them. The smaller palms will never get as big around as those are.
Okay,
and
couldn't
they
we
are-
have saved a lot of money, though, by just planting some nice little shrubbery there that could have been
Well, we did,
just
there's
big.
shrubbery there too.
probably for a lot more money? Okay, I'm just saying, the landscaping could save us a lot of money if you put your minds to it. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Manager,
That is all we had, if you wanted to.
did Jan want to you want to come back?
Not at this time.
This is it. No.
Not until next year.
So many
Business.
parochial questions.
What's that?
I have a lot of parochial questions because I just don't understand. I don't understand why,
If you're going to talk about the budget, please come to the podium again.
And,
well.
and these are budget related, correct?
Consume a lot of time because I just don't understand what I don't understand. Why do we have 5 or 6 different categories for admin fees? Why can't we see a bottom line of what we're paying for all administrative costs? They're broken up into different categories, and it's hard to put a bottom line on it.
You're talking about per fund or in total?
I'm talking, it starts on page 1 with expenditures, administrative services, operation administrative services,
Yeah.
and then it goes back into, on
Towards
page
the end,
5,
Yeah.
administrative services,
If you look at page 14, I think there's actually.
I didn't go far enough?
There's actually a schedule that shows all the administrative departments in the total.
Question answered. I want a second. Saving money. I think we need to be more cognizant of that. I know that a lot of the folks here are retired, and I know that a lot of folks have a lot of money, but there are a lot of folks that don't. And just charging huge increases, I just think it needs to be very, very carefully thought out, and the repercussions it could have on quite a few families. So 30% or 18% is huge, even though we picked up our share a few years ago. That's still huge. These are fixed income families for the largest part. So that would be a major concern of mine. And I'm going to go over this budget now that I understand it a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. Is there any other resident that wishes to speak to the board strictly on the fiscal year 17 budget? Hearing none, then I am going to close the public hearing on the fiscal year 17 budget and reopen the regular board meeting. When we closed for the budget, we were at one place, and we will return to that. But before we do, we have a resolution, actually 2.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think also you might have the public hearing on the imposition of the assessments. I think open the public hearing for that, for any comments or objections to any of the assessments to be levied. I think, Stephen, that was also
Yeah,
indicated.
if we can do the first resolution and then come back to that, or you can just do the second part related to the special assessments.
Yes, if I can get to my page. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm on page 189 of our agenda. I'm going to ask I'm not going to read this whole thing for you, but I'm going to ask the board in a moment to adopt this annual appropriation resolution relating to the annual appropriations and adopting the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2016 and ending September 30th, 2017. The pertinent parts of this resolution start in the bottom of page 190, where it says, "Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of the Gateway Services Community Development District that the Board of Supervisors has reviewed the district manager's proposed budget, copy of which is both on file and in your hand. And the district manager budget says attached as Exhibit A, is hereby adopted in accordance with the provisions of Section 190.0082A of the Florida statutes and incorporated herein by reference. provided. However, that the comparative figures contained in the adopted budget may be subsequently revised and deemed necessary by the district manager, and that is because we haven't finished fiscal year 16. To reflect annual revenue and expenditures for fiscal year 16 and revised projections for fiscal year 17. Section 2 is the appropriations, where it says at page 190, it is hereby appropriated out of the revenues of the Gateway Service Community Development District for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2016 and ending September 30th, 2017, the sum of,
The total will be $14,529,354. So
to be
one,
excuse me,
I just wanted to, one more time, 14529,354. That's the sum for all, and that's all funds. That would include your capital project funds as well.
are you gonna break that down for us?
I can, I have those numbers.
Please.
For the total general funds, and the total general funds would include your main 001 fund, as well as Pelican Preserve, Stony Brook, Town Lakes, and your capital project and your lake bank restoration funds. In total, that would be $8,810,938. Your debt service funds, the total for that would be $493,425. And the last category, which is your enterprise, which is water and sewer, as well as the capital projects related to that, that's $5,224,991.
Thank you very much. For those of you who may have guessed, Stephen Bloom is our financial expert. I will continue. The board may authorize by resolution supplemental appropriations or revenue changes for any lawful purpose from funds or on hand or estimated to be received within the fiscal year as follows: A, B, C, la-da-da-da-da. Introduced, considered favorably, and adopted this first day of September 2016 by motion of Margaret,
So moved.
and seconded by
Second.
Pam. Any conversation from the board members? All in favor of the adoption of the annual appropriation resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Mr. Manager. Now, we're gonna have another conversation on the resolution that follows.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what you may want to do is open a public hearing to hear any objections or comments on the actual assessments that will be levied. And if anybody signed up to speak on that.
Our attorney has suggested that I open another public hearing strictly on the district imposing special assessments and certifying an assessment role and providing a severability clause and providing an effective date. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to talk about the district imposing special assessments for fiscal year 17? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. And I'm going to ask the Board of Supervisors to adopt the resolution starting on page 193.
So moved.
Resolution 2016-15 for the record.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a motion to adopt resolution number 2016-17.
15.
15, thank you.
Yes, sir.
To set the assessments for the year, and I have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any conversation about the assessment resolution? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Mr. Manager. Thank you all very much. We will now return to our regular order of business, where our operations manager is going to continue with her report. April, would you remind us exactly where we were and what we've done?
Page 87. Or 88. 480.
For those of you who are leaving, thank you very much for coming and showing your attention to the very important business of your CDD.
I was looking for one particular thing that I wanted to cover.
Well, we could be on page 89 or 90 or someplace in there.
Sure, Greg.
Found it. In the operations manager report, was there any other specific questions?
No, do you feel that you have your direction on the
Lake 104?
104?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Let's see.
I do have one question, and that was, somebody asked me about the natural gas, and if TECO has moved forward with that at all. And because, you know, we're heading toward the colder months when the propane is gonna start costing us a lot of money, and the natural gas was gonna save us a lot of money. So, were we looking at a date on that?
Yeah, I believe they're ready to start in 7 to 10 days.
Okay,
They're ready to start in 7 to 10
Correct.
days.
and they're coming straight down Gateway Boulevard instead of the uphill easement, is that right?
Correct. They're going down Gateway Boulevard, and also it'll come down Commerce Lakes when it goes towards the brewery.
Do you have-
Okay.
do you have an estimate as to how long it'll take?
Probably say 2 months, roughly.
2 months. That's assuming they don't cut any of our utilities.
Yes, sir. That is making that assumption. The last I heard was they plan to start not Labor Day week, but the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Okay, I do have one issue that I didn't make on the operations manager's report, but I wanted to try to get some direction. I had sent an email regarding the workshop and management meeting with Mr. DeCerbo. And so I didn't know if we wanted to have a conversation about that and provide some guidance to management on what strategy we would like to take.
Well, we might
Or
as well
not.
get it out of the way.
Good.
I'm gonna let other board members start. This if they'd like to. As a matter of fact, I think I'll start it myself. I think Mr. DeCerbo has shown his true colors. In one letter, he has disrespected this board 3 times. He has refused our request to meet in public in a workshop. He's insisted to only meet with management privately with a board member of his choosing. He insisted that our attorney not be allowed to review his charges. I think we can do a lot better than this. A professional facilitator could come in and make our life a lot easier and with good decisions. Who's next?
I was surprised that he didn't want to have, the attorney involved at all. I'm not quite sure what his rationale was on that. Do we have any idea?
I don't have the specific history, and Tony may be able to speak better to that, so I don't know if he was requested to execute a comprehensive document. I didn't get clarification on that.
Stephen, could you put up, once again, September 1st, 2016?
I'm sorry, September 1st?
September 1st, today,
Okay.
September 1st, 2016, Joe DeSerbo.
You're talking about from your flash drive?
Yeah, please.
Okay. September 1st, Servo. There are 3 files in here.
I think it says Joe DeSerbo.
Email chain,
No, Joe DeSerbo.
qualifications. Yeah, I have the folder, but there's 3 files within the folder.
What's the name of the one? You
One
said
is,
qualifications?
Yeah, okay. There you go.
Yeah, let's go with qualifications, please. All right. Obviously, I have been a proponent of this gentleman, having known him from the Florida Association of Special Districts. And also, we received this report over a year ago. And we knew of his qualifications, but there has been some dissension, some negativity regarding him. I mean, look at his qualifications. Like the Lake Bank restoration, which has been left go for years and years and years, and has been part of the politics, and now the people are having to come to terms with it. The same thing is true with trying to get an organizational type of direction for the Gateway Services Community Development District and the staffing, etc. The organizational chart. As has been said numerous times, there isn't a one of us that are sitting here on the board that has ever really worked in a CDD. We sit on this board, but we don't really know how this thing works. And here's a gentleman that actually does, and his qualifications that he has are just astonishing. He actually came in and took over the Spring Lake Improvement District, completely improved it, changed it, etc., and it's running like a clock. And as indicated, his development practices earned him the State Manager of the Year for Special Districts in 2012. And Spring Lake, the one that he runs, he manages on a day-to-day basis, received the state's 2014 Special District of the Year. Now, there have been a lot of statements, and I don't want to start igniting back and forth, but it's rather apparent that he's got the qualifications. What he didn't want to do is sit in something like we've gone through before, of the back and forth with somebody that doesn't want him and has expressed that quite at length, and other people that might. What he wanted to do was to take and to put together the chart, the format, the program, work it together with the operations, interview the people, and then come up with the direction. Now, we had and have had this for a year. And because of negativity we paid to have this. We could have had him for a whopping $900. We just passed a budget of how many millions of dollars, Stephen?
14 and a half.
Exactly. So now we've got a guy that's willing to come down and spend 2 days with us, 2 total days, set up the entire organization that we've drug our feet for a year, kind of like the lakes for 25 years. Although I haven't been there 25 years, so people are going, aha, he's one of them. No, I can only take responsibility for 8. But I can take responsibility for the input for this. We need to get this thing going a year ago. And now all we're doing is having this same dragging of the feet and trying to hope that he doesn't come in. It's apparent. It's necessary. he's the guy, we should get it done. And the fact of him not wanting to go through the negativity and waste the time on that, but instead only use 2 days of time and make it productive time. And the rest of it is right there, and some people might need to review it and read it again.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I did reach out to Joe after the email because I was just wanting more clarity on why he didn't want to meet with the board. And I was under the impression that from my perception and kind of what he called out, that he felt like this was more of an operational process than a board. And it wasn't necessarily, I'm sure there might be, but the impression I got was it's just not, this type of activity is not something he would do in an open public environment with a board. It's more productive to do in a setting where you've got one board member that is representing the board along with management staff, because the staff should know the ins and outs where the issues are. So I agree with bringing Joe in, and we just need to determine who that board member is that's going to represent us. And I think with talking with Joe, what his expectation was from an output perspective is to have at least 2 viable options to bring back to the board. And when I say viable, these are 2 org structures that could be slightly different based on, whether it's 2 at the top or 3 at the top or an engineer or not an engineer, but 2 viable options that the working group agrees on that we take back to the board, and we should be able to vote on those 2 options or 3 options. I wanted to have Joe, or at least someone that has experience that could be a moderator during a working group with the board, because I felt like we would need that. But if his recommendation is we can do it a little differently, I don't have a problem with that, as long as we're moving forward to solutions and we're not putting this off any longer, because we're stalling our staff.
I agree.
Oh.
I definitely agree. I would hope that maybe Margaret would be that person that would meet, and I think you are totally unbiased. So I would appreciate it if you would do the honors of being that board member that would,
Well, I appreciate that confidence. If that's what the board agrees to, I'm happy to do it.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I would add just one thing. I think one of the drivers why we wanted to come together as a group is because we all wanted to provide input. We wanted to collectively come together and make this decision. So it's not one person drafting, it's not someone else's agenda. So what I would recommend, if we are going to go with Joe, initially I was thinking we would just put our thoughts and send it over, but now after I've thought about it a little bit more, I think Joe needs to spend some time with each board member, just on a phone conversation, 30
Well-
minutes, 45 minutes.
well, he's already, I think we.
But I think he needs to do it again, because I think
No,
things have.
maybe you should
Maybe
spend
he-
Or
some
maybe
time.
you, or that's
Yeah,
fine. If
yeah.
you guys are comfortable that Joe knows what your position is, and if it's the same today as it was 6 or 8 months ago when you sat down, that's fine. But I think if someone wanted the opportunity to spend some time with Joe to provide input, or here's our concerns, risk, I think we should have that open.
And since you haven't had really the opportunity that the rest of us had, because when he did his study, he actually sat down.
Yeah, I know, I
with
read
all
that.
of
I
us,
did
and
see that.
So you didn't have the opportunity to do that with him, so
Okay.
I understand that.
Will you care to make a resolution?
Or a motion to move forward with Joe.
Can I just say one more thing, Pam?
Yes.
So what we'll need to determine is if the workshop or work group, if the proposals or solutions that come out of that, if we can review them and we deem that they are viable, that out of the 2 or 3 solutions that we can, us personally as individuals, can get on board with one of those solutions, then I think we can present it to the board. If there's some, if there's a reason why we can't, then that's the only reason why I would say we would have to get together as a workshop. But I don't think we need that if we take this route. And does anyone
Well,
disagree
may
with
not
that?
need a-
That the
may not
expectation
need
is
a workshop at all.
that we would,
Let's
that we could vote after coming out of
take
this
one
work group?
step at a time.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to approve moving forward with Joe DeCervo and having Margaret being the representative for the board.
You've heard motions or second?
A second.
Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Great.
Thank you all. Discussion items, Timberwood Preserve infrastructure turnover. That's 5A.
Hello again. One more time, Tyler Wainwright with Tetra Tech. Before you tonight is the turnover of the infrastructure in Timberwood Preserve. Timberwood Preserve is the community just to the south of us here off Griffin Drive. I think there's 43 single-family lots. We will be taking the utilities and the storm drainage in that area. There's a recommendation before you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Have they provided all the documentation and have they done the visual inspections and they've provided you with all the information that's required by our
Permit criteria, ma'am.
our permit criteria manual?
Yes, ma'am. They have given us all the documentation that we have required. We've looked at videos of the gravity sewer. We looked at videos of the storm pipe. We performed periodic inspections when they were constructing it, and we are satisfied with the development.
Yeah, and what the appropriate action would be if the board so inclined is to adopt the resolution. I don't have the resolution number, 2016 blank, whatever number, and accept the bill of sale and warranty deed and the transfer of the environmental resource permit to be executed by the chairman.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have motion and a second. Conversation, Mr. Newbound.
7 questions.
Yes, sir.
Actually, one question's got 2 questions. So you're stating the lake banks are properly constructed,
Yes, sir.
the street is properly constructed, and there's no final lift that's needed.
The street is not being conveyed to Gateway.
All right.
Would you ask him why?
Why?
The developer chose not to propose to dedicate it to Gateway on the plat. Developer's over there, you could ask him if you'd like.
Mr. Developer, we're asking you. David, would you come up, please?
Sure, David wanted to.
Dave Caldwell, WCI, for the record. If the question is why did the roads go to the HOA, it's because typically in the Gateway area, you don't take the roads, and they've gone to neighborhood associations,
Okay.
and that we just continue that trend.
So there are a number of streetlights there, David, right? Probably 2 or more?
The streetlights are part of the association expense.
Okay. All right. You've got all the answers. Drainage system's been videoed, correct?
Yes, sir. All the drainage infrastructure has been
And we have the copy of the
television.
report, is that correct? How I'm making you, sewer too, right?
The gravity sewer and drainage pipes within the community have been inspected and TV'd. Yes, sir.
Okay. Fire hydrants, how many are there?
I don't have that
See?
right now
Gotcha.
for you. I would guess the's, I don't know.
Run down the street and count.
Have
I'd
they-
be happy to count them for you if you would like.
All the required number.
I'll go with what he
That's
said
great.
on that one.
Who tested and certified them?
Who tested and certified them. The contractor performed a pressure test on all of the pressure utility in the area.
And the flow?
The
mean,
flow
it doesn't-
tests are performed, I believe, every 6 months by South Trail.
So they've done the initial?
I don't know if they have, but they typically do, and I'm
Are
sure they
those
will.
part of our responsibility? If they are, we should have some type of documentation that they are.
I don't believe that's been the practice for South Trail
Is
to
it?
provide
Or
that,
is it?
but I'll check with that and get back with you.
Okay. And who tested the irrigation system?
The irrigation system likewise was tested by the contractor, and all of the reports and certifications that was delivered to us. I should note that on the irrigation system, that community is master metered. So
Okay.
Gateway will
There was no
accept
copy of a report for
I'm
any
sorry?
of those. There's in the stuff we got.
I have copies of all the pressure tests. If you would like a copy of them, I'd be happy to give them to you.
Okay. All right. And South Florida Water Management District is last but not least.
Yes, sir. So they have certified the project with South Florida. Also in your packet tonight is a form to transfer that permit to the operation phase. So in addition to accepting the conveyance of the infrastructure, to go along with that would be to sign the form to transfer that permit to the operation phase.
Which is why I asked the question.
Yes, sir. It has been certified.
Okay.
Hey, Finney?
As soon as they bring you the fire hydrant test. Whatever.
Any other questions?
No.
One point I think April wants to clarify, or for me to clarify, is I think there's outstanding review fees that need to be paid on that, so.
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
I'll let April.
It's been brought to our attention at a couple of the previous board meetings about specific fees and our fee schedule. So we are trying to go back and review the fee schedule, and so there are some final fees that are due according to our fee schedule. So I just wanted to make sure that the motion was contingent, like we did Hammock Cove, that it's contingent on collecting the final fees.
These are final fees from WCI, is
Yes,
that
sir.
so?
Yes.
Is that agreeable with both the motion maker and the seconder and the rest of the board?
Yes.
Thank you, April. Any other questions? All in favor of the resolution for turning over the Timberwood Preserve at Gateway, please say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You meant contingent upon the payment.
On contingent upon the payment and the fire hydrant.
Absolutely correct. Very good.
Thank you. 5-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
Manager. Thank you. Thank you, David. Annual field use agreement with Gateway Soccer Association, 5B.
It's that time of year, and we are bringing before you for approval the amended request for the field usage agreement with the Gateway Soccer Association. And I summarized on the regular agenda item summary the significant revisions to the agreement. And those were on 13F. We have eliminated, on this draft, eliminated the request to see the financial statements. I know that's been an item of contention. We've had discussion about it in the past. And I believe there might have been where we were leaning towards not requesting that at this time. 14.1B provides for a one-year renewal with written notice from the district. This eases the administrative process, so the board would be approving the document every 2 years. And also in 14.2, the termination language has been clarified to indicate that the district can terminate with notice for breaching the agreement, and clarifies that we won't terminate without cause if all the fees have been collected.
Thank you, and you are recommending our approval of this.
I am recommending the approval of the
You've
agreement.
heard the operations manager report on the soccer. May I have a association, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a motion and a second? Conversation?
Still, I object to 13F. As the people have very plainly expressed during the budget thing and the costs, I doubt very highly that many people here are aware of the hundreds of thousands of dollars, $395,000 to be exact, that we're intending to spend on just the lighting alone of the soccer fields, running at a deficit position every year, and they're paying for it. And we're not even asking to see the financial statements, which were always provided in the past by the previous soccer organization, and they were provided readily. We we've reduced the insurance requirements, and we've eliminated seeing what their financial status is with this, and we're still asking the residents to pay.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Mr. Attorney, you told us, did you not, that the Soccer Association insurance matches our requirements? Is that?
Well, the board has in the past, we've had a 1 million, 2 million, this is a 1, 1, and 3 million, from a professional basis. April and I discussed this and compared it with other agreements, and we're comfortable recommending that to the board with the additional rider that's in there too.
Thank you.
And if I may, provide some additional input, I really think that we're working closer towards some significant revisions that would assist with the additional revenue. Tony and I had a discussion, and one of the issues, the constraints that we have with this agreement is that in the past, it was the church association that had this, and which is nonprofit, and that was transferred over to a for-profit organization. And right now, we currently run the associations that utilize the soccer field. They are subject to our usage fee schedule. And so I did what you asked at the previous meeting, and I reached out to the city of Cape Coral, and I reached out to Lee County to find out how they administer some of their agreements. So part of what we need to distinguish, and I've had this conversation with Mr. Allison, he's on board, he understands that, and he is willing to pay more. One of the things that he understands is that we are currently charging him on the usage fee schedule. Basically, I think what might have been intended for the youth organizations, leaning more towards a nonprofit organization. Lee County does not charge their nonprofit organizations. So there's another layer on the usage fee where we could actually be charging the Gateway Soccer Association the regular business fee. That's the bottom line of the usage fee schedule. But right now, in order to, Tony and I discussed this, right now where we're at, we think that the appropriate method would be to revise our usage fee schedule. We need to figure out what that should be, reorganize our usage fee schedule, divide that up in between your nonprofit organizations and your for-profit organizations. Make your for-profit organizations pay more. And right now, the GSA is willing to do that. And so I think if we work collaboratively, we can, it may not be the exact middle ground as far as fees, but I think we've definitely engaged in a conversation where we realize that additional funds need to be received to support the soccer complex. We've opened up those conversations, and I think that's our next step, is to revise the usage fee, and then this agreement becomes subject to a new line on the usage fee that has higher fee amounts.
For the renewal term.
Excuse me?
Right now, on this agreement as it exists, it would use the rates, fees, and charges in effect today, and then upon the renewal of the agreement.
Right.
The new rates, fees, and charges would kick in.
You've heard the operations manager and our attorney. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further conversation? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, April. Ladies and gentlemen, we're down to item 7, staff reports. District Council.
Nothing further than what we discussed earlier, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. District Engineer, I can see we're going to have some conversation there.
Good evening, everyone.
Who are you?
One more time. I'm still Tyler Wainwright. I'm still with Tetra Tech. So I guess our first item here is the proposal for the design services for the lake bank restorations. So quick summary here. The SRF loan, where we're at in the process is the state met in August. They approved the pre-construction portion of the loan, which takes you through design, surveying, bidding, all of that good stuff. So that allows us to proceed with the design of the project, should it be approved tonight. The state will meet again in November, and at that time it's anticipated they'll approve the construction portion of the loan. So we'll be ready to build, hopefully. So, before you tonight is the task authorization for us to proceed with design and surveying of the lakes, like we talked about earlier. We'd like to do more surveying out there, specifically in the easements, to identify vegetation and possibly structures that might be in the way. So we've got time in there for that. We'll be completing specific design on 13 lakes, which are listed in there. And that's what we have, so be happy to answer any questions.
Eventually, will this amount be part of the SRF?
Yes, ma'am. So this monies would be paid through the SRF loan, is the way I would propose it.
And that's one, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's one of the questions I asked.
I wish you would.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I asked, was whether or not, we don't have the loan proceeds yet. We've been approved for the loan, but it's like any kind of financing, you may get approved, but until you have the cash in your hand, you don't have the funds. So I didn't know if if Tetra Tech was gonna bill, the district pay, and then the district be reimbursed from the loan proceeds, or Tetra Tech would bill and the bills would be held. Stephen, I don't know what, or Tyler, from an SRF perspective, what works?
Well, you're not gonna be able to get money back until they do the official approvals. We can certainly hold the Tetra Tech invoices.
I don't think we wanna do that.
That would be my first thing, yes, but, you know, you basically would be paying upfront.
And getting reimbursed for the loan proceeds?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the way we propose it.
The requisite amount, I think it was that David said.
Something like that.
All necessary approvals.
I'll make a motion to approve this. We need to move forward.
Thank you very much. I have a motion, may I have a second?
Second.
Any conversation?
Yeah, just a point
I'm-
of policy.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Policy. The fact that when you do complete these surveys, that each affected homeowner should receive a letter and a copy of that survey, i.e. we're giving policy to staff that that homeowner has been informed, so it isn't a surprise.
We can do that. I think what I would propose to you is that we complete our survey efforts and have the correspondence be between staff and the residents.
Yep.
Okay, but still, we need the policy to direct staff so that it isn't becoming a back and forth. So, is everybody in agreement with that?
I am.
Yeah, sounds good.
There you
We
go.
agreed on it.
Direction.
I have a motion and a second to approve this recommendation on design services for lake bank restoration and Tetra Tech. Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Mr. Manager. Track L roadway turnover items.
Okay, so this one we briefly touched on at the last meeting. We are nearing the finish line of the Tractell proposed conveyance from WCI to Gateway. Tractell encompasses the area around Cypress, around and including Cypress Grove and Pelican Preserve. It includes parts of Solaro, I think it's Azura, various other areas throughout there. So we have completed our reviews. The developer has provided all the documentation that we have asked for and that is required from the permit criteria manual. As we have previously discussed, the members of, or citizens in Pelican Reserve asked that additional pipes be inspected via TV, and WCI has graciously so far accepted to do that. So we are moving forward with that. In addition to that, there is a memorandum that is included in our package tonight from PPAC, identifying some additional items that they would like to see done. So they're listed there for your reference. So basically, we're looking for a direction of if we are going to ask WCI to do those things or not.
Stephen?
You have something else on a flash drive for us?
Well, of course.
You-
God loves a PowerPoint. Okay. If you would take a look there, you'll see one that says Safety in Cypress Grove Issues. And the PowerPoint.
comments about bringing stuff into board meetings, Mr. Neubauer.
Why, you have a problem with this?
No.
All right. So, rather than me, narrate this thing, but I will, Pelican Reserve Advisory Committee, and in addition to that, another group, of which I've been appointed through the board as part of the Safety Committee, have some very serious requests regarding Cypress Grove and things to be done by WCI before it is accepted. If you go to the next slide, please. There are 4 specific items that were, hello. What's the matter, Tony?
The red and black.
I thought I picked a format on.
It worked.
On PowerPoint, I thought it was.
It worked.
In any case, number 1 is the inadequate street lighting at the intersection of Pelican Preserve Boulevard and Cypress Grove. This is one which they consider as a serious safety issue of great concern, and they have spoken with WCI and recommend adding street lighting for safety. And there's some photos that'll be coming up very quickly. Additionally, there has been discussion with both Tetra Tech and, in addition to that, the traffic engineer from the city of Fort Myers about speed limit signs. In each direction on Cypress Grove, which is a very long road, there is only one speed limit sign of 30 miles an hour in each direction. They're requesting a second in each direction, and which the location of those have been recommended by the city of Fort Myers traffic engineer. The other one, number 3, this is extremely serious, and hopefully the photos that I took will give you an idea of it. It's a very dangerous crossing for golf carts, for people, for whatever. It is essentially a blind curve on one side, it's a hill on the other side. So it is virtually a blind crossing in both directions. And last but not least, WCI is aware of it. I believe April's aware of it as well. There was an incorrect billing for all of the electrical of Cypress Grove from the get-go to the CDD. And the CDD has been actually paying for all of WCI's electricity all the way up through today, which needs to be corrected. Could you go to the next slide, please? All right, this is that, and talk about, where's Joe McCulca when you guys are complaining about, take a look at that street striping, if you want to talk about wobbly and wavy, etc. But this is the main intersection. Proceeding from left to right is Pelican Preserve Boulevard. Ahead is Cypress Grove. Now, if you take a look, this was during the height of day, but if you're coming to make a left-hand turn from that outer lane and turning into Cypress Grove in the evening, it is absolutely black at that point. It is totally dark. And so there is a very strong concern of the fact that people crossing, walking, biking, etc. And remember, this is, I hate to say it, showing my age, it's a 55 and older community. There are people that are disabled and people that are actually driving electric carts, etc., because of disabilities. Next slide, please. Just another one. Next slide, please. All right, this is looking straight down Cypress Grove. Now, what I defy anybody at this point to be able to see where the crossing is. You can't, because it is around a total curve to the right and it's on the back side. So anybody that's driving down that street, remember it's the street with one speed limit sign in each direction only on a very long road, you can't see the crossing. Next slide, please.
Oops,
Moving
sorry.
closer. Bing, bing.
Sorry.
Moving closer, now you're starting to see the signage that's there, but you still can't see the crossing. It's virtually blind. Next slide. So here's our speed limit sign, and you can see the next signs that are approaching. Next slide. Next slide. All right, we're getting closer. We still can't see the crossing. And yet people are going 30, and some people are doing obviously more, including construction vehicles. Keep going, please. Now we're starting to get up to the lit sign. Now you can see, I can't doctor this, you can see the dynamics of the lit sign. I don't think anybody here sees anything that really is that warning. And in the far distance, if you can look, that's where the actual crossing is. Next one, Stephen. This is the statement from PPAC. The bottom is the statement from me, having driven that many times. My suggestion is that WCI and the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee need to work together along with the traffic engineer to come up with something so that somebody isn't hurt. Next slide, please. This is me parked there with the Silver Beast looking back at Pelican Preserve Boulevard, which you can see where I'm at, and Pelican Preserve Boulevard is virtually blind from there, so I'm showing you in both directions. Next one. Okay, we are now approaching, finally, after coming through a blind curve, the crossing. And you can see the cart path over on the right-hand side, the far right-hand side, adjacent to the sidewalk. Next one, Steve.
And the sign, it's right at the
You
sign.
see it? Yeah. And this is even a close-up now, so we're right at the intersection, and you can see the cart path over on the right-hand side. Sidewalk is straight ahead of you. And if you look, you can see the upward of the hill that you're now approaching. So from the opposite direction, people are coming towards a hill, and they can't see this crossing either. Next one, Steve. Now we're finally getting to a level plane. Continue. Continue. And that shows the hill again. Now we're heading up towards the intersection of Azura. The cart path is over on the far right. Keep going. Now, Azura, because of that hill, is also a blind turn to go in the opposite direction. Very, very limited visibility. Please continue. Here's the sign that now directs people from that intersection to take the cart path rather than crossing there. And the next one will show you a close-up. And continue. All right. So we see the hill, but we can't from here see that crossing again. It's totally blind. Next one, Stephen. Now here's the crosswalk at Azura. Flat, level. Next one. But you've now got the cart path coming here, but continuing further down rather than having them cross. But even yet, next one. Here's the cart path over on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. We're coming up to the intersection of the next street, which is Solaro. Totally flat, plenty of distance, a much, much safer location. And on top of that, next slide. If you looked to the right-hand side, for some reason something skipped, the cart path actually is winding, and there's an opening in the bushes where the cart path could actually come right through those open bushes, and you're right at the intersection, totally flat, perfect view in either direction, and can cross right at Solaro. But again, Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee should be the one to do it. Now, the thing in contention is okay, who's going to pay for this? Well, I use this as an example. This is what was a part of heated discussion between Bill and I before, and this is where the safety committee is talking about adding additional striping. This is the intersection of Pelican Preserve Boulevard, next stop sign down from Cypress Grove. This is where in the distance It changes from 2 lanes to 1 lane, and it immediately changes the speed limit over a blind hill from 30 to 15. Next slide, please. Now you're seeing the signs all stacked, and people have just gone through a stop sign. And if you look, you can see the incline going towards the bridge, which crosses the main flowway, the outflow from Pelican Preserve, which is really coming from Stony Brook and Gateway, and then flowing through Pelican Preserve and going out towards Tree Line. This is what we were left with, and this is what ultimately Pelican Preserve is going to bite the bullet, us residents, to try to correct this and make it as safely as possible. And by the way, on the right-hand side, you'll notice that there is a 4-foot wide stripe. That all of a sudden, the road narrows, curves, and goes over a hill, and suddenly, whether you call it a cart lane, a bike lane, a combined lane, whatever that argument will find lies after these people have the meeting, suddenly you run out of road. You essentially are forced to be in the middle of traffic going over a hill. They're asking for us to hold back until they have worked this out with WCI. I'm asking the same.
Are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
Please.
Good evening. Neil Montgomery for the record. I would ask you if you would, before you decide to take any action on that, to kind of read toward the bottom of Tyler's memo, because he makes a very important finding that I think you need to be cognizant of, and that is that the roads were built in accordance with the permits and the regulations of the city of Fort Myers, and they were reviewed in accordance with your standards and found to be in compliance. So what you would be asking them to do, you would be saying, ignore what our approvals, ignore our regulation, ignore your approval from the city, and ignore their regulations, and now go spend money and do something different because we don't like it now. I'd submit that doesn't seem fair, and I don't think, and I would think there's an estoppel, and there's a new statute that went into effect in October that says if you start to impose exactions that are unrelated to the permits and the requirements, that poses some problems. So I would encourage you to be fair and allow people to be able to rely on their review and their approval and your regulations. If you don't like your regulations, you need to change them, but you can't change them after you issue a permit. So that's my concern. Thanks.
I should note that Ms. Montgomery is an attorney for WCI.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You
Sorry.
don't object to my saying that, I hope?
No, sir.
Just to get it on the record. As someone said one time, this is a fine kettle of fish. Before I weigh in on this thing, because I've got several different ideas, I'd like to hear what any board member would like to offer.
I think earlier, Mr. Banks had asked if there were any other issues that we might discuss with the city of Fort Myers when that meeting took place. Perhaps these issues would be relevant to bring up at that time. It's just,
Why would you think that?
because we're talking about the issue of the golf carts and the golf cart path and the striping of the street. And it seems this kind of fits in that same plan, that golf carts are gonna be forced into the main road when they reach that striping over that bridge. Just a thought, just a
Brad, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any idea what WCI's feedback would be on these 5 issues today, correct?
Whose, please?
We don't have any feedback or any ideas on whether WCI would address these items or not, correct?
Well, Ms. Montgomery is the attorney for WCI, and you just heard her indicate that she
yeah.
thought it would be unfair for us to hold the the approval.
Well, I felt like she was speaking to the one issue, not additional street lights, the three-way stop. I mean, there's several issues here.
Well, I thought there were 5.
There are 5.
There are 5.
They're fine.
There are 5 issues that the Pelican Reserve Advisory Committee has identified as less than a perfect situation from a safety standpoint. Now, I live in Pelican Reserve, and I have driven the golf carts across this street, and I have stopped at the stop signs, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I want them to be as safe as possible. And I want to remind you in a different way from what Mr. Neubauer said, that while we're an over 55 community, we have a lot of people in their 80s trying to drive their golf carts from their home over to the town center for arts and crafts or whatever they do. So I'm as interested, I'd like to say I'm as interested as Mr. Neubauer is in maintaining, increasing, perfecting the safety along the lines that have been identified for us.
I mean,
On the other hand, our engineer and attorney have indicated that WCI has actually exceeded all of the requirements of our permit criteria manual and the requirements of the city of Fort Myers, and they would like for us to accept Tract L so they can get on with other business. I don't feel right in trying to coerce WCI into doing things that they are not legally responsible for. But on the other hand, I want as much safety for my friends and neighbors as I can possibly acquire.
So can I ask a question, Bill? Tyler or whoever, so these 5 items, are any of those out of code, or is there?
Well, I mean, this area that we're talking about here, this was designed and permitted, I don't have an exact date, roughly, let's say 10 years ago, before any of us have involvement in what we're doing right now. Maybe not Tony, but.
I beg your pardon. We're driving a golf cart across that, it was less than 10 years ago, but I'm not gonna pick nits with you about it.
In the position that I am in right now is that.
Stay, won't you please? Hello, goodbye.
I'll be back.
Oh.
So, I'll say that I don't think anybody's disputing, or at least I'm not disputing, that the improvements recommended would make the area better, safer. I guess what we're presenting is that they have constructed what the plans and the permits show to construct.
Okay.
I think, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, from my perspective, the comment I made in my memorandum was, first of all, there are a number of items that yet in my opinion, need to be corrected as far as the documentation. This is the 3rd submittal going back to 2012 that was deficient, as outlined in my memo. I think you all got that over the weekend, hopefully.
Yeah.
But aren't you getting this off the track here?
No, not really. Well, one aspect was the city of Fort Myers engineer, when they made a comment, he recommended, now I'm not sure if it was just a recommendation or almost a requirement, that there be 2 more speed limit signs. That was in there.
So, what he's referencing is, PPAC had Carl Caracos come out and go through the community. I think the intent behind that was they were looking at signage and striping for having FMPD go out there and do patrols, and they were doing the traffic review associated with that. Mr. Caracos recommended in an email that he thought it would be a good idea to add 2 more speed limit signs on Cypress Grove Drive. And that's why that's on the PPAC report, is because Mr. Caracos recommended it. I don't think
I would like to just put the speed limit signs off the agenda for a while.
Okay.
It doesn't cost anything to put speed limit signs up. We're talking about.
The real
popular
issue is
change, so-
this whole golf cart rerouting that.
That's it.
I mean, I think we could probably get WCI to put up a couple signs
Yeah.
and do that. It's, the issue is, how are we willing to withhold submitting this or approving it to have the golf cart area,
Gonna have to have it resurveyed and all, da-da-da. It's not gonna be
and
quick and easy.
and I don't know if we can hold, if there's not something we can hold WCI to doing that, I don't know, I mean, I don't see anything that says that there's a violation.
I mean, I guess I'll say that's sort of leaving engineering land and getting into legal land, so I'll just not comment on that.
Then we'll move over to legal land.
Well, yeah, but my understanding is that there's other, and the reason why I did not put them in my memorandum was, I did not understand those to be requirements of the city of Fort Myers as to all this rerouting and the extra lighting. I understood that those were in compliance with I did not see anything indicating they were not in compliance with the city's code. The only item that stood out to me was the city engineer's recommendation about the additional speed limit signs.
But the speed limit sign.
I know, but I'm saying that's why.
It's a non-entity.
That's why that's in my memo, and I didn't recognize or address the other ones.
Mr. Engineer, give us an idea how much it's gonna cost to reconfigure that golf cart crossing.
Golf cart crossing, it could be anywhere between $5,000 and $20,000, depending upon what we end up doing.
And that's P-PAC says they don't want to pay for that. Is that?
No.
I mean, I don't think.
If somebody gives you something that's unsafe, and additionally emphasize the fact that, hey, this met the permit criteria manual 10 years ago. Oops.
But I
I'm
guess-
sorry,
well-
I'm not finished yet. It's a safety matter, it's a safety issue. We've already had people run over in the intersections at other places, at Pelican Preserve. We don't need this blind hill and a curve.
I just,
Come
you know,
on.
Mr. Chairman, I guess from my perspective.
I know it's not safe and or it could be improvements, but I just don't know if we can hold WCI to fixing this.
Well, the improvement, if it wasn't there, all they're going to need to do, and all is my word, A, take your flashing sign, that's at a location that is a dangerous location, go down the street to where the cart path comes out, and it's right there at an intersection that's totally visible in both directions and totally flat. That's where the cart path was. They built the rest of it to drive it down to that intersection. All they've got to do is just right there at that intersection, and the path is right on the other side of the bushes, but the bushes, for some reason, aren't there anyway.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a comment, I guess, from the standpoint of any assertions as to whether or not the roadway is safe or not safe, with all due respect to other individuals, if the traffic engineers of the city of Fort Myers, if the district's engineers and their engineers have indicated or believe that it meets the current standards of what's the Green Book, is it nowadays? The MUHTCD, or Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices or Design?
Well,
If it meets
I don't
that.
think I say that. I think I say it meets the plans that got approved.
Okay, and once again, we were not the permitting agency for the signage for the roads, that's the city of Fort Myers. Yet they are asking the district to accept a facility that may not meet current design criteria. That's my concern.
may not.
That's correct, it appears it may not, and that's an analysis I don't think has yet been performed. Issues have been raised, but I don't know if Tetra Tech has indicated that it met the permit, but it doesn't meet the current design criteria of the Green Book.
There's a lot to that. For one thing, you have decorative signs out there. There's a lot to being fully MUTCD compliant, which is what we went through when we redid Gateway Boulevard and Griffin Drive and replacing the signage and the size of the signs and the heights and all of that. So there's quite a bit to that statement, I'll say.
I would just like to add something to the conversation.
Who are you?
So, I'm Rhonda Brewer. I'm Vice President of Community Development for WCI Communities. And so one thing I just want to bring to your attention is that we did our final lift of asphalt, and we had an extensive walkthrough with Gateway earlier this year, which generated a punch list of items that we needed to perform on. We perfected all those, and then we did a final walkthrough with Gateway and actually got an email from the district engineer on May 11th that said that we had completed all of those required improvements. So we feel like we have, lived up to our end of the bargain and complied with all those requirements.
Before you sit down, can I ask you one thing? Because some of these other things just seem like they're very little, like adding the additional street lighting at that intersection, or adding a couple more speed limit signs, and the three-way stop. Is there any reason why you don't feel like those things could be done?
I don't feel like they can be at this time. Again, we were provided a punch list of items. We have met the criteria. We've
Okay.
perfected that.
Okay, so
Hold on. Is it because you're worried about setting a precedent?
Yes, the problem is, we met your permit criteria. They met the city of Fort Myers permit criteria. They got an inspection to confirm that they met the criteria. There has to be finality at some point in time. You expect us to meet your rules, and we expect you not to change your rules once you issue us a permit. It can't be the catnip we never can get to. And yes, there's certainly, you guys worry about precedent, as do, folks on this side of the table.
If we were to agree to this tonight,
Streetlights, I'm gonna go back to, streetlights are not cheap. Redesigning and rebuilding things aren't cheap. And there's a statute that says if you do this, and if that's, we can come back and recoup those costs. That's what 70.45 is all about. They added to the Byrd-Harris Act and said, if you're gonna impose this exaction, which this now becomes, that's not under your criteria, we can come back and recoup that. We don't want to do that. That's kind of why I'm here to say, don't do that. Don't put us in that situation either. We met your rules. We should all respect your rules. If you don't like the rules, they need to be changed.
would you comment on what our attorney, Mr. Parrish, says about some of the other issues that he brought up?
I believe what I heard him say earlier is he's looking for some additional documentation. I don't think, we're not here just having a discussion about the documentation. Our concern is the item that's on the agenda that suggests that we want you to go do a bunch of new permitting. And as you folks know, that's not an easy task. And it's not just construction. You have to go out, design it, permit it, and build it. So you're asking us to go back and start all over again, and so they're not inclined to do that. If there's any paperwork that has to be addressed, certainly we'll have to do that.
And the reimbursement for the.
Say again?
My memo also mentioned the reimbursement for the electric bill for the streetlights.
Yeah.
That was in there also.
We can work that.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out.
We'll figure that out, yeah.
it sounds like we really don't, for lack of a better term, it sounds like we really don't have a leg to stand on to request these 5 additional items.
I'm not so sure I would make that statement. Again, the question becomes, did the City of Fort Myers engineer recommend that, hey, you need additional street signs? Apparently he did. As to the other matters, I didn't hear anything where he indicated that those were necessary. And the second part of that is the City of Fort Myers, again, issued the permit for the roadway.
Mm-hmm.
The district did not. And the district is being requested to accept it. For the roadway, did we issue a permit for the streetlights and the pavement and the marking and all that for the roadways?
WCI was issued a permit by Gateway to construct the track down improvements, which include roadway, yes.
Okay. Did we have signs and streetlights for that part of the district's approved permit?
I don't know about streetlights, signs were shown on the construction plans.
Did we was that part of our approval? Because I think our approval is stormwater management, drainage and utilities, and
To be honest with you, that approval was, I mean, let's say roughly 10 years ago. I wasn't part of that approval. I can't answer that.
we need to confirm that.
I'd like to make a statement here that,
I'll let you read it.
I don't like the way this is gonna sound, but I haven't written it out ahead of time. I've told you that I want Pelican Preserve to be as safe as it can possibly be. And we are working with WCI right now, today, tomorrow, to build homes in Pelican Preserve. We have to work with these folks and to try and coerce them into doing things that our permit manual did not require seems to me to be extra legal, and I just can't accept it.
You were showing a document to him, is
Oh,
that?
I
what-
just wanted to try to address the point that Mr. Pierce made. Carl Caracos, the transportation engineer, indicated that I have a memorandum that says it appears the existing speed limit signage on Cypress Grove Drive is adequate. I mean, this is part of his review and acceptance of the improvements. So somebody else may have come back out. If you ask them the question, hey, can we do things to make it better? That's one question. The question I think I'm going to is, did the engineer come out and do an inspection and accept the work? And the answer is yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to get this put to bed tonight if we possibly can. Before it gets to be bedtime. Is there a motion to accept the Tractell period, or area as it's been put together by WCI and met all the requirements?
Mr. Chairman, my only concern with that, and pardon if I'm out of line, I don't believe it's in a position for the board to accept it or not. I think the discussion tonight is whether the board would have, as part of the acceptance package, the items that were raised by the Pelican Reserve Advisory Committee.
Why do you think we can't accept it tonight?
No, as mentioned in my memo, the special warranty deed, there's items with that, the owner's affidavit, there's a number of documents that I think still need to be addressed and or provided to the district.
You don't think we could accept it, subject to those being adequately provided?
No, I'd like to see them in the, before the board and for the public in an agenda packet.
You know, you're postponing this another.
Yes, sir.
We started on this in July, as I recall, and here it is September.
So what exactly are we being asked to do? I guess I've lost that
We
in
don't have to do
translation.
anything.
I guess what I am personally asking for is direction on those specific construction-based items, if we're going to basically give WCI a punch list with those items or not.
And we had already given them a punch list, and they met all of those items. You went back out and said, okay, you've done all the things that we've requested.
Yes, ma'am, that's
And
correct.
now this is the Pelican Preserve Committee that's coming back and saying, whoa, wait a minute, we want these things added. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
correct?
Yes.
So unless, am I wrong, unless there's a motion to add that, we don't have to do anything if we don't want any action taken. Is that correct?
You need to do something. We've got to get this cleared one way or the other.
Well, is Pelican Preserve P-PAC, is it already in talks with WCI
No.
about some of these things, these issues? Have you guys already started
Mhm.
talking? So what is the harm of having this on so that maybe they can iron some things out?
Well, that's what legal just basically said, that they're not under any obligation to do these things.
No, we're not saying, we're not asking them to do it, but they are trying to negotiate together.
So we
And
submit
at
it and
this
just
point,
let
they
them
are
redline it
just-
and say, we don't agree with this, is that what?
Well, they can do that, right? They can, if we put it in there, they can say that what they wanna do and what they don't want to do.
I mean, if we formally request it and they can say, no.
No.
I don't think it's a surprise that Neil's here to try to get us to get this done. I mean, We've been down this road before. Similarly, when we tried to improve the permit criteria manual because of the misconstruction of other parts of Pelican Preserve, which Neil doesn't bring up in her discussion, but then again, that's a negotiating tactic.
That was the old WCI.
Oh, God, we could get down real close on that one.
Well, and I was just trying to make you smile a little bit.
Yeah, I guess to make it real simple, well, I guess real simple. What they have submitted to date is deficient in my humble opinion, because they made an original 2012 submittal that had deficiencies. I did a memorandum in November 2012, and they never responded to that. They made a 2014 submittal of phase 2, and the staff said, we're not gonna look at phase 2 until you fix phase 1. Then they came back, and so in 2015, nothing happened. Finally, in June of this year is when I received the package of the third submittal. And the third submittal didn't have some of the documents from the 2 prior submittals, from 2012 and 2014. So those are still out there. I'm sure WCI is working on those documents. And that's why I say, with all due respect and subject to being pummeled, that this package is not even ready for acceptance by the board. I think the board's decision point is whether or not the board would ask the staff to consider including its recommendation for acceptance, the 5 items requested by the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee. And if the board says no, then we will try to wrap this up with WCI and bring the package back to you after they've corrected what and provided what they need to provide. That's one approach.
I would be inclined to listen to the residents and at least include these 5 items into the packet. And they can come back with what they want to come back with. And we can make a decision. I think we, owe it to our residents.
You wanna make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Aye.
Wait a minute, I wanna make sure that I understand precisely the motion. This is that we are going to, ask the residents,
We're putting this into the package. This is being sent over to WCI. Nothing's being approved yet. And they're going to come back with the agreement for us to approve. But that they are going to look at what the residents are asking in terms of safety issues.
And we also don't have the ability to have Mr. Measy here tonight because he had to go out of town, or he definitely would have been here at the meeting. And again, the reference is to something that was permitted 10 years ago. And also, I will remind that when we tried to have our improved permit criteria manual, Neil also fought us and threatened that they were going to court over that to try to improve things, but she references that. So again, it's all negotiating back and forth, and I think that the big picture of this thing is safety enhances salability in Pelican Preserve, having been in that business for only 39 years.
I have a motion on the floor. We've all
And a
heard it.
second.
I have a motion and a second.
Mhm.
You ready to vote?
Yep.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Now that you got that through so easily, you
Oh,
want,
I'd like to, there's one thing that I would like to go back to just because it's procedural, and that is to accept consent agenda item 4D, which was the operations manager report.
Yes.
make a motion.
That's my motion.
Second.
Moved and second to accept the operations manager report. Any conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Okay.
Okay, you again.
Yes, sir. Me, one more time.
Please proceed.
Lucky you.
Okay, so this one is in regards to the storage facility. So we had previously discussed at meetings when we were talking about doing the building expansions that specifically if we expand this building, we will likely have to increase parking because we're increasing building area. So by doing that, we're probably going to have to start eating into the storage area. So the board had some discussions and we had some discussions about what we're doing with the existing facility and if we wanted to look at a new area over behind the soccer park, behind the dog park. So we've done a little more investigation than the last time we talked, and we found out that the county is actually going to require for that to happen. They're going to make us get a development order. So that's something that we hadn't originally planned on. It requires us to do a little bit more work than we were expecting. We got to do
Traffic study?
Yes, sir. So that would make us do traffic studies. That would make us do environmental assessments. There's a lot. I think there's a list in there specifically of the items they would request. Now, I will say that the development order process allows for submittal requirement waivers and
Say again, what?
a submittal requirement waiver, which basically is a waiver saying, please don't make us do this. But the problem with that is that I can't tell you today if they would approve those waivers or not. So the proposal before you tonight is to complete a design of a new storage facility. Over there, there's a field behind the dog park and the soccer park. It was actually originally designed to be another soccer field, but it didn't get constructed. It just stayed vacant. So this would be for the design and permitting of that area. I will say that it is a time and materials proposal, so if we do happen to get those requirements waived, that wouldn't be work that we would have to perform. So that's the proposal.
How much, so this 39, this, with the additional rigor that you have to put on, how much additional cost is that to what the original was?
Basically, the development
I think
order.
it was like 60K originally, somewhere around there.
Yes, sir. So the development order permitting, we've listed as 18 grand to complete that effort. So that's something we just did not plan on, or at least
So
planned on at a
80
much less.
So we're looking at 80 all in. By my,
That's not even including the fencing.
I think
Thought
that.
that did include fencing.
I think we
Yeah,
gave
yeah.
an estimate of
60
grand
was
roughly, and
all
that
in.
include
I mean,
fencing.
with a variance of probably 20%, maybe 20%. But by my estimation, just in building this out, it will increase our revenue stream by about $55,000, maybe $60,000 a year, because we'd go from over to 100 plots potentially, which I think we take in, what, 15K? 13,000 today. If on average, if it's 100 plots, let's just say we increase it from $60 a month to 80, that's almost $80,000.
What?
Yeah.
So we
What-
can pretty
do the-
well pay for
You
this
gotta do
in
those
1 year.
numbers for me.
No. Okay, so if we had 100, doesn't that sound right?
$960 per year per spot, times 100. You add 2 zeros, $96,000.
I don't believe it.
Yep.
So this would
I'm
pay
sorry,
for itself in
let's
short
do
order.
This would, this would pay for itself the
Euclidean.
first year.
We're getting
Yeah.
$10,000 or $12,000 off of this thing now.
13
Yeah.
grand.
And that's for what, how many are there? 20?
And
Take
what-
that,
And what makes you think we're gonna get a whole lot more?
because we have a
We have a
huge
waiting
waiting
We
list.
have a huge waiting
We have a
list.
waiting list
Huge.
of 50.
And I guarantee you, once we announce this, it'll be sold out within a month.
How can you guarantee that?
I can, because I know, I've got 10 people that want a spot today.
Well-
One wants 2 for his camper and his boat.
Even
I
if
guarantee
we-
it, it's a great
Even if
move.
it bumps up 100% to 26,000, amortize that cost, in a year and a half, we're free.
Yeah, no more than 2 years to completely pay this, and then we go into a positive revenue stream of at
Correct.
least $70,000 to $80,000.
I'll make a
This is a
motion to
no-brainer.
approve this.
I'll second.
This is a no-brainer.
Okay.
Now, it
got a
sucks for my
motion.
buddy who might want to expand the soccer field at some point. But,
Yeah, but
but-
another question though is, so you submit that, please, 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 how long before they approve it?
Well, I mean, we would have to complete the design first because we can't just ask for the waiver before we submit a package to them. So
All
what
right,
we would
come
do
on,
is.
come on. How, okay, then I'll back you up. How long is it gonna take you to do this design?
I think we had dates in there.
Is that a week?
We are proposing to complete field surveying in 20 days, and design is 50 days, cumulative, so
Can
50
we cut
days
that- Can we
cumulative.
cut that in half?
No, sir, I can't.
Why not?
I don't think it would be responsible for me to do that.
You can't get somebody to do the surveying in 10 days?
We can. I don't know if you're going to like the results of it.
The man of your strengths, and come on.
We will do our best efforts to proceed faster than the schedule we are proposing.
50 days?
Yes, sir.
Oh, come on, Tyler. 30, come on.
I mean,
Come
I think
on.
is this
will-
technically a
Come on,
2017
Tyler.
project anyway?
You're costing us money every day.
Yeah.
We
All right,
we
so-
will proceed diligently. However,
Let's
the
go.
schedule I presented before you is what I'm
30
thinking of.
days, right? You agree? Abu?
Let's go with
Bob, he'll do his
45.
best.
Nah, let's go with 30.
I like 45.
All right, let's.
All
did
right,
you
we'll negotiate. 30
make a
days.
motion?
Settle, 45, we'll take it.
Let's not hold his feet to the fire and let's just get
Oh,
the
for crying
project
out loud,
started.
you know. That's,
Okay.
that's the fun, of holding his feet to the fire.
Do I have a motion to approve this?
I already made it.
I
We
thought-
already have a second.
All in
Pam
favor,
seconded.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. I'm
You're-
4-1.
How could you
You're
oppose
All right,
this?
so we've,
This is no
it's
brainer.
35 days, right?
I think, I disagree.
35 days, Tyler.
I'm not commenting anymore.
We didn't even talk about the
All right, let's do
the risk
let's-
issue. Yeah.
7C, district manager's meeting schedule.
So this is your tentative schedule for fiscal year 2017, full year. Looking for changes, if not approval.
If nobody has an objection, may I have a motion to approve the meeting schedule for fiscal 17?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion, may I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much. April, are you taken care of tonight satisfactorily?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay. Board members?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Pam?
Giggle.
I'm making t-shirts.
Mr. Newbauer?
I won't even begin to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.
Fantastic. Nice meeting.
Thank you.